Imagine you are standing in the center of a house. The light is soft, the air is still, and every object is perfectly placed. This is the house of your life, the collection of beliefs, habits, and memories you call you. The pictures on the walls are your triumphs and your heartbreaks. The chairs are worn in the shape of your daily routines. There is a sense of profound, unshakable familiarity here. It is, by all accounts, your home. Yet, as you stand in the quiet hum of this existence, a chilling realization begins to dawn on you. You have no memory of ever drawing the blueprints. You cannot recall laying a single foundation stone or raising a single wall. You are the occupant, the resident, the one whose name is on the mailbox. But you were not the architect. This life, this structure of identity you inhabit so completely, was designed by hands you never saw, guided by intentions you never questioned. Its corridors were shaped by the whispers of your parents, the expectations of your culture, the silent pressures of your education, and the forgotten traumas of your youth. You have spent your years arranging the furniture within rooms that were already built, choosing curtains for windows that were already framed, never once thinking to ask, who designed this floor plan? And why this design? Why is the door to your wildest passions so small and tucked away in a dark corner, while the hall of your obligations is grand, central, and brightly lit? Suddenly, the comfort of this house becomes suffocating. The stillness feels like stagnation. You begin to notice things you had previously ignored. A faint draft coming from beneath a sealed door, a warped floorboard that groans under the weight of an unexamined belief, a strange recurring pattern in the wallpaper that mirrors the repeating failures in your life. You press your ear to the walls and hear the faint echoes of other people's voices, other people's fears, other people's dreams, all masquerading as your own. This is the great and terrible paradox of the human condition: to live a life that feels intimately yours, yet is fundamentally a script written by others. You are the lead actor in a play you never auditioned for, reciting lines you did not write, moving towards a final act you did not choose. And so the real question begins to burn within you, not with the gentle warmth of curiosity, but with the searing heat of existential urgency. What happens if you stop following the script? What happens if you begin to knock on the walls, searching not for comfort, but for the hollow spaces, the hidden rooms, the parts of yourself the original architect bricked up and plastered over? Who would you become if you could find the original, unmarked blueprints of your own soul before the world began its relentless construction project? Is it even possible to renovate a house while you are still living inside it? Or must you, in some terrifying and profound way, tear it all down to the ground and stand for a time, exposed to the elements, armed with nothing but the radical, terrifying freedom to build anew? This is not a journey of self-improvement. That is merely rearranging the furniture. This is a journey of self-reclamation. It is the quest to find the ghost in your own machine, to confront the silent cartographer who drew the map of your life without your consent. To transform your mind is not to learn new tricks or adopt positive affirmations. It is to embark on an archaeological dig into the very foundations of your being. The prize is not happiness, not success, not peace, though these may come. The prize is authenticity. The prize is to finally, for the first time, hold the blueprints in your own hands. But before we can learn how to build, we must first understand the invisible nature of the architect we are up against. A force so pervasive, so deeply embedded in the architecture of your consciousness that you have been trained your entire life not to see it at all.
This architect, this silent, pervasive force that constructs your reality before you are even conscious enough to object, is not a single entity. It is a ghostly legislature, a committee of invisible influences that collectively draft the constitution of your identity. In the deep study of the human psyche, we call this the primary narrative. It is not just a story you tell yourself. It is the very operating system of your consciousness, installed at birth without your permission. This narrative dictates the rules of your world, what is possible, what is forbidden, who you are, and who you are forbidden from becoming. Its prime directive is not your flourishing, but its own survival. It seeks to maintain the structure, to keep the house standing, at any cost to the occupant within. The great thinkers of humanity have been warning us about this architect for centuries. Plato, in his allegory of the cave, gave us the perfect metaphor. You are not merely in a house. You are a prisoner chained in a cave, forced to watch shadows dance upon a wall. The primary narrative is the puppeteer behind you, casting these shadows and convincing you that they are the only reality. The image of love you chase is not love itself, but the flickering shadow of it cast by your parents' relationship. The success you strive for is not your own definition of a life well lived, but the shadow of it projected by your society's values. You have been taught to analyze the shadows with great intellectual rigor, to predict their movements and to name their shapes, never once thinking to turn your head and see the fire, the puppets, and the staggering truth of your own imprisonment. From the depths of psychoanalysis, we understand that the first drafts of this narrative are drawn in the cradle. Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung revealed that the architect's contractors are the internalized figures of our caregivers, the imagos of mother and father that take up residence in the basement of the psyche. These are not our actual parents, but the powerful, mythologized versions of them our infant minds created. Their voices become the bedrock of our inner critic and our inner judge. Their unresolved conflicts become the faulty wiring in our own relationships. The foundation of the house you call me is built upon the emotional bedrock, and sometimes the emotional rubble, of generations past. You live in a house haunted by the anxieties of your grandparents and the unfulfilled dreams of your parents, feeling their phantom weight in your own chest without ever knowing its source. Then the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche arrives on the scene with a sledgehammer, telling us that society itself is a master architect of mediocrity. Your primary narrative is shaped by what he called herd morality, a value system designed not for the elevation of the individual spirit, but for the smooth, predictable functioning of the collective. The house is designed to be safe, comfortable, and exactly like all the other houses on the street. Your education, your social conditioning, your media, they're all contractors in this grand project, meticulously sanding down your sharp edges, lowering the ceilings on your ambition, and bricking up the windows that look out upon any vista too wild or terrifying. The narrative teaches you that to be good is to be compliant, to be wise is to be cautious, to be happy is to be normal. It instills in you a deep and abiding fear of your own potential because your greatness would undoubtedly crack the foundations of this tidy, manageable prison. This is why you feel a sacred duty to a life that is slowly draining the life from you. The primary narrative has intertwined itself with your sense of identity and survival. When you contemplate a bold life change, leaving the safe job, ending the familiar but empty relationship, speaking a truth that will disrupt the peace, the alarm bells that ring are not merely fear. They are the house's structural integrity alarms. You feel a profound, almost primal guilt, as if you were committing a betrayal. And you are. You are betraying the architect. You are betraying the narrative that has, until now, defined your very existence. The problem is that this architect's most ingenious, most diabolical trick is that its voice sounds exactly like your own. It has whispered its blueprints into your ear for so long that you have come to believe they were your own ideas. The warden of your prison is not a stranger in a uniform. It is a trusted old friend who lives inside your head. And now you must face the chilling consequences of living in a house designed by a ghost, a house that was never meant for you.
Living in the house the architect built is not a life of over-tyranny. It is a life of quiet, imperceptible decay. The consequences are not sudden or dramatic. They are like a slow-acting poison that you mistake for air. The primary narrative maintains its power not through force, but through a masterful, silent campaign of cognitive and neurological warfare waged against your own spirit. Your very brain becomes the loyal servant of the architect. Through a process known as neuroplasticity, the neural pathways that align with the narrative's rules become entrenched, efficient superhighways. Meanwhile, any thought of rebellion, any inkling of a different way of being, must travel along faint, overgrown footpaths. This is why change feels so difficult, so unnatural. Your brain, in its relentless pursuit of efficiency, is hardwired to keep you walking the same familiar, pre-approved corridors of thought and behavior. You are not just psychologically conditioned, you are neurologically captured. Worse still, the architect has installed a vigilant gatekeeper at the very entrance of your perception. This neurological filter, known as the reticular activating system, is programmed by the primary narrative to validate its own existence. If your core blueprint says, "I am not worthy of love," this gatekeeper will diligently scan your reality and allow only the evidence that confirms this edict to enter your conscious awareness. A partner's compliment will be dismissed as manipulation, but their momentary silence will be amplified into proof of your unlovability. A professional success will feel like a fluke, a fraud soon to be exposed, while a minor setback will feel like the inevitable confirmation of your inadequacy. You are living in a self-validating feedback loop, a hall of mirrors designed by the architect to reflect only its own distorted image of you. You do not see the world as it is. You see the world as your narrative needs it to be. This mental siege is reinforced by an army of cognitive biases, the invisible maintenance crew of the house. Confirmation bias makes you the architect's most passionate defender, actively seeking proof that the walls of your prison are in fact the boundaries of reality. The sunk cost fallacy becomes the emotional chain that binds you to your own unhappiness. You stay in the soul-crushing career for 20 years, not because it serves you, but because leaving would force you to admit the last 20 years were spent serving a false master. You cling to the broken relationship, investing more emotion and time, because to leave would be to acknowledge the bankruptcy of your initial investment. It is the logic of a gambler who believes the next hand will recoup all his losses, all while the house always wins. Culturally, the architect sells you the myth of arrival. It designs a long, arduous hallway labeled life with a promise of a grand ballroom at the end called happiness or fulfillment. You just have to get the degree, land the promotion, buy the house, find the partner, and then the doors will open. So you spend your entire life marching down this corridor, your eyes fixed on a destination that is always just one more achievement away. The unseen consequence is that you never actually live. Your existence becomes a perpetual state of deferment, a life forever about to begin. The most tragic part is that there is no ballroom. There never was. The purpose of the hallway was just to keep you walking, to keep you occupied, so you would never question the design of the building itself. The cumulative effect of this silent sabotage is a catalog of human suffering that we have mislabeled as personal failure. The chronic low-grade anxiety you feel is not a chemical imbalance. It is the constant, vibrating hum of the soul's cage. The sense of profound meaninglessness, what the great psychiatrist Viktor Frankl called the existential vacuum, is the echo in the empty rooms of your potential. The imposter syndrome you experience is not a lack of confidence, it is the honest and accurate feeling of an authentic self forced to play the role of a character it despises. And most devastatingly, the acts of self-sabotage you cannot understand, the impulse that ruins the good relationship, the procrastination that scuttles the great opportunity, are not signs of weakness. They are the desperate, tragic acts of rebellion from the prisoner within. A prisoner trying to burn down the jail, even if it means being consumed by the flames. What if this pain, this anxiety, this deep and aching sense that something is fundamentally wrong is not the problem at all? What if it's the solution in disguise, a distress signal from the one true occupant of your body and mind, the one you have been trained to ignore? The house is beginning to groan and crack, not because you were broken, but because the part of you the architect tried to bury alive is finally, miraculously, strong enough to start pushing back.
So the walls are cracking. The pain you once tried to numb is now speaking to you. A frantic, urgent Morse code tapped out from the buried chambers of your soul. How do you answer? How do you begin the great work of liberation? The first move is the most counterintuitive of all. You do not run for the exit. You do not scramble for the light. Instead, you turn around, take a deep breath, and walk deeper into the darkness of your own house. You must make a pact with your own pain. You must cease treating your anxiety, your depression, and your fear as pathologies to be cured and begin honoring them as guides to be followed. Your anxiety is not a malfunction. It is a compass needle spinning wildly because you are finally moving away from the false magnetic north of your inherited life. Your sorrow is not a weakness. It is a form of sacred grief for the person you were meant to be. To break free, you must first learn to listen to the wisdom of your own wounds. This is the path of radical inquiry. You must become an archaeologist of your own psyche. Forget positive affirmations. They are merely fresh coats of paint on a rotting structure. Instead, you must pick up a flashlight and a pickaxe and descend into the basement. You must be willing to look at the crumbling foundations, to trace the faulty wiring of your inherited traumas back to their source. As the great psychoanalyst Carl Jung stated, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This means asking the forbidden questions. When you feel a surge of guilt, you must stop and ask, whose rule have I broken? Is this my rule or a rule from the architect's blueprint? When you feel the sting of shame, you must ask, who is this judge that condemns me? Is it my own authentic voice or the echo of a critical parent, a shaming society? This is not a comfortable process. It is the work of interrogating ghosts. You must explore the decaying structures of your mind, like an urban explorer wandering through the abandoned ruins of a forgotten theme park, piecing together the story of what once was so you can finally clear the land. Once you have begun to map the blueprint of your prison, you must begin to intentionally destabilize it. The primary narrative thrives on stability, routine, and predictability. Your liberation, therefore, depends on narrative defiance. A prisoner does not escape by simply noting the thickness of the walls. He escapes by testing them, by finding or creating a weakness. You must begin to commit small, deliberate acts of treason against your own narrative. If your architect decreed that you are uncreative and practical, you must sign up for a pottery class. If your blueprint dictates that you must always be agreeable and avoid conflict,
you must practice saying no to a small, insignificant request. These acts are not about the outcome, they are about the defiance. Each time you contradict the narrative, you create a new neural pathway in your brain. You are quite literally forging an escape route, neuron by neuron. You are proving to the system and to yourself that the architect's rules are not laws of physics. They are merely suggestions, and they can be refused. The most powerful maneuver, however, is a profound shift in identity. The architect's power depends entirely on one fundamental lie: the belief that you are the house. The practice of radical disidentification is the ultimate jailbreak. You must learn to witness your thoughts and emotions instead of being swept away by them. Through practices like meditation and deep self-awareness, you begin to realize that you are not the storm of your feelings, but the vast, silent sky in which the storm occurs. You are not the voice of the inner critic. You are the awareness that hears the voice. This creates a space, a sacred distance between your authentic self and the machinery of the narrative. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus knew this 2,000 years ago. It is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. You are not your narrative. You are the consciousness that perceives the narrative. This was the secret Viktor Frankl discovered in the deepest hell of Auschwitz. When everything that constituted his house, his career, his family, his freedom was stripped away, he found the one thing the architect could not touch: the inner citadel, the freedom to choose his own meaning. He realized he was not the prisoner, he was the witness. This is the beginning of true power. You stop being a haunted tenant and become the liberator. And in that shift, you discover the most beautiful and terrifying secret of all. The doors were never locked. They only seemed to be because you were told never ever to try the handles.
Part 5. The final, most powerful realization. You stand at the threshold, the handle of the once forbidden door cold in your hand. The air outside doesn't smell of freedom, not yet. It smells of a vast, unnerving stillness. You have mapped the house. You have defied its rules. You have realized you are not the structure, but the space within it. You have done the impossible. And now you turn back, expecting to finally confront the architect, to see the face of the shadowy warden who designed your confinement. You brace yourself for a monster, a tyrant, a ghost. But as you turn, you find no one there. Only a mirror. And staring back at you from the center of the house you just escaped is the face of a child. It is you. This is the final, most shattering, and most liberating realization of all. The architect was never an external force. It was not your parents, not your society, not some cruel, abstract entity that did this to you. The architect was your own consciousness. It was the brilliant, terrified, and desperate child version of you who, faced with the overwhelming chaos of the world, the confusing signals of love and pain, did the only thing it could. It began to build a house. It used the materials it was given: a parent's approval, a teacher's lesson, a moment of shame, a flicker of fear, and it constructed a fortress. The primary narrative wasn't a prison built to punish you, it was a sanctuary built to protect you. Every rigid rule, every lowered ceiling, every locked door was a survival strategy designed by a small, masterful engineer trying to make a dangerous world feel safe. In this single moment, the entire narrative of your life fractures and realigns. Your struggle is no longer a war against a villain, it becomes a process of profound integration with a younger, wounded part of yourself. The anger you felt at the walls of your prison dissolves into a wave of overwhelming compassion for the small hands that built them. You see now that your self-sabotage was the child architect pulling the emergency brake, terrified you were heading for a cliff it saw long ago. Your anxiety was the sound of that child banging on the walls, warning you of a perceived threat. You are not a victim of your past, you are the result of its most heroic survival effort. Your life has not been a failure, it has been a masterpiece of psychological self-preservation.
And with this compassion comes a power far greater than any rebellion. If you were the architect then, you remain the architect now. You have not been living in a prison built by another, you have been dutifully and loyally occupying a starter home that you, yourself, have long since outgrown. The power to design your reality was never taken from you. It was simply abdicated. You delegated the most sacred task of your existence, the authoring of your own life, to a frightened child. And you must now approach that child within you, not with blame, but with reverence. You must thank it for its service, for getting you here, for keeping you alive. And then, with gentle authority, you must relieve it of its duty. You must tell it, thank you. I can take it from here. This is the ultimate transformation. It is the move from unconscious architect to conscious architect. Your life ceases to be a problem to be solved or a sentence to be served. It becomes a blank page, a canvas, an open field. You can now look back at the old house, the abandoned theme park of your childhood defenses, not with shame or anger, but with the fond, knowing tenderness one has for a historical artifact. It is a monument to your own resilience, but you do not have to live there anymore. Now you turn away from that house and face the infinite landscape. You hold the pen. You hold the drafting tools. The work ahead is no longer about escape. It is about creation. This space, this channel, is our drafting table. Here, we will pick up the tools of the master builders of the human spirit, the philosophers, the psychoanalysts, the poets, the mystics. We will not study them to copy their designs, but to learn the universal principles of sound construction, of beauty, of building a life that has the integrity to withstand the storms and the grace to house the divine. The old architect built a fortress for survival. The question that will echo through every moment of the rest of your life is this: what will you build for liberation? What cathedral will you design for the purpose of being truly, consciously, and magnificently alive?